The higher your IQ, the worse your financial decisions might actually be. And no, that's not an insult. That's backed by science. And by the time this video is over, you'll understand exactly why being smart can be your biggest financial weakness. We live in a world that tells us intelligence is the key to everything. Get good grades. Go to a good college. Get a good job. Be smart, and success will follow. And for most areas of life, that's actually true. Intelligence helps you solve problems, learn faster, and navigate complex situations. It gives you an advantage. But when it comes to money, that same advantage can quietly turn into a liability. Because money isn't just about logic. It's not just about knowledge. And it's definitely not just about being smart. In many cases, the very traits that make someone intelligent, like overanalysis, confidence in reasoning, and the need to feel right, can work directly against them financially. And today, we're going to break down exactly why that happens, and more importantly, what you can do to avoid falling into the same trap. There's a concept in psychology called overconfidence bias, and smart people are more vulnerable to it than anyone else. Here's how it works. The more intelligent you are, the more confident you become in your ability to understand things. And the more confident you are in your understanding, the less likely you are to question your own decisions. You start trusting your logic more than reality itself. And in many situations, that works just fine. But in finance, that confidence becomes dangerous. Because financial decisions are rarely about being right in theory. They're about being consistent in practice. Markets don't reward intelligence. They reward behavior. And behavior is driven far more by discipline, patience, and emotional control than by raw intelligence. Smart people often underestimate that. They assume that if they understand something deeply, they will automatically act correctly. But understanding and acting are two completely different things. And that gap between knowing and doing is where most financial mistakes happen. Let me give you some real examples of how this plays out. Example 1, the overthinker. Meet David. David has a master's degree in economics. He understands markets. He reads financial reports for fun. He watches interviews with top investors. And for the last 6 years, David has been trying to find the perfect moment to start investing. He keeps analyzing, keeps waiting, keeps finding reasons why now isn't the right time. There's always a risk, always a variable, always something that doesn't feel perfectly aligned. Meanwhile, someone with zero financial education who simply started investing $200 a month into an index fund 6 years ago, they're already far ahead of David. Not because they're smarter, but because they acted. Example 2, the rationalizer. Smart people are incredibly good at building arguments. They can justify almost anything. And that ability becomes dangerous when applied to spending. That expensive car becomes a strategic investment in image. That subscription becomes a productivity tool. That impulse purchase becomes a reward. The intelligence doesn't stop the mistake. It just makes the mistake sound reasonable. Example 3, the complexity trap. Highly intelligent people tend to believe that complex problems require complex solutions. So they chase advanced strategies, alternative investments, and highly technical systems. But the data shows something very different. Simple, consistent investing, done over long periods of time, outperforms most complex strategies. Even the greatest investors in the world repeat the same principle: simplicity wins. But for someone who values intelligence, simplicity feels too easy, too basic, almost inferior. And that perception leads them away from what actually works. Here's the deeper psychological truth. Intelligence gives you the ability to construct narratives. And narratives are powerful. They shape how you interpret reality, how you justify your decisions, and how you explain your outcomes, both to yourself and to others. But when those narratives are built around protecting your ego instead of improving your results, they become dangerous. Because instead of asking, what actually works, you start asking, how can I explain why what I did makes sense? And that shift is subtle, but incredibly costly. Smart people are especially vulnerable to this because they're very good at storytelling, especially logical storytelling. They can take a bad decision and wrap it in such a convincing explanation that it no longer feels like a mistake. And once a mistake doesn't feel like a mistake, it doesn't get corrected. There's also another layer to this. Admitting a financial mistake isn't just about money, it's about identity. For someone who sees themselves as intelligent, being wrong financially creates internal conflict. Because now it's not just, I made a bad decision. It becomes, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. And the ego resists that at all costs. So what happens? Instead of cutting losses early, they double down. Instead of simplifying, they complicate even more. Instead of stepping back, they go deeper into the same strategy. And over time, small mistakes turn into expensive patterns. There's also a social dimension that most people don't talk about. Highly educated, intelligent individuals often surround themselves with similar people. And in those environments, spending becomes more than consumption, it becomes signaling. The right neighborhood, the right lifestyle, the right choices. Not necessarily because they truly want those things, but because those things communicate competence, intelligence, and success. And when you combine that social pressure with overconfidence, you get one of the most expensive behavioral patterns a person can have. So what's the solution? The answer might surprise you, because it has almost nothing to do with becoming smarter. In fact, it's almost the opposite. The solution is humility. The ability to step back and say, I don't know everything. My instincts might be wrong. And simple might actually be better. Because financial success isn't about proving that you're right. It's about doing what works, consistently, even when it feels boring, repetitive, or too simple. The most financially successful people aren't necessarily the most intelligent. They're the most consistent. They don't try to predict every move. They don't try to outsmart the system. They don't overcomplicate. They build systems. They automate their savings. They invest regularly. They remove emotion from their decisions. And then, they let time do the work. That's it. No complex strategy, and no constant analysis, and no need to be right all the time. Just discipline, repetition, and patience. Intelligence is a powerful tool. But in finance, it only works when it's paired with emotional discipline and intellectual humility. Because at the end of the day, the market doesn't care how smart you are. It only cares what you actually do. If this hit different for you, if you recognized yourself in any of these patterns, then you're already ahead of most people. Because awareness is always the first step. Most people go through years, sometimes decades, repeating the same patterns without ever questioning them. You just did. And that matters. If you want more content like this, content that helps you think differently about money, behavior, and long-term wealth, make sure you subscribe. And I want to hear from you. Which of these patterns do you see most in yourself? Are you the overthinker, the rationalizer, or stuck in the complexity trap? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And I'll see you in the next video.